Goodwill.org.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. Property tax relief to some degrees coming for downtown businesses, though unwelcomed by our guest today in the studio. Public input on the city's $3.8 billion budget, which is so tight it doesn't even fund a position that leads the Entertainment Commission. That's on my list here today. Plus frustrations along 7 Mile Creek, more data centers proposed in the city limits, Waymo vehicles removed from our busiest streets, and police drones over Madison. And we'll probably let Mayor Freddie O'Connell do an end zone dance over winning Super Bowl 64. Or do you want to do that right now?
I'm going to be doing my dance tomorrow about a century's worth of affordable housing arriving on the East Bank.
So instead of celebrating the Super Bowl, you choose affordable housing.
I mean, I wouldn't say necessarily instead of, but in addition to.
What is that celebration?
This is pretty exciting, actually. This is a representation of the work that we did starting upon taking office to immediately jump in and work with the company that kind of won that opening bid to redevelop a portion of the surface parking lots that we've had over by the old Nissan Stadium for ever since the current stadium got built. And we said, hey, we've got a couple of priorities we want to work on. And one of them is we want to have long-term, in fact, century-long commitment to housing affordability at this site. They break ground on that very project tomorrow, the Fallon Company.
Wow. So that's what you'll be out celebrating, and then celebrating a little more this weekend. Well, Super Bowl 64, though, is on my mind. And I'm just thinking, obviously, there's a $2 billion stadium that's got to be finished. But how much is it going to cost for the city to host this thing?
We're very fortunate in that when we work with great partners like the Nashville Convention and Visitors Corporation, they typically do, for special events, help with cost coverage. I don't think there's a detailed analysis yet. I know I will say our finance department is looking closely and carefully at that, but we are, I'll just say from my perspective, we are very focused on making sure that both redevelopment of the East Bank along the way is in service to Nashvillians and future Nashvillians who expect to call it home or want to visit, and that we are keeping costs for Nashvillians to an absolute minimum as we prepare for this major event.
Well, kind of getting ahead of myself here without reminding people that this is actually your turn to talk. We're taking your calls. What do you want to hear from the mayor? He's right here. He's listening. He's talking. What does he need to know about in your corner of Davidson County and beyond? I mean, anybody in Middle Tennessee calls Nashville home to some degree. Mayor's in the studio and listening. The number's 615-760-2000. You can also join in the live chat on the video stream, which is at youtube.com/@WPLN. We may just go ahead and jump into some phone calls here since they're coming in. So Trina in East Nashville, you're on the show with the mayor. Go ahead.
Hi. Mayor O'Connell, the Metro Charter holds you responsible for MMPD. Yet between FUSIS, the $15 million nonprofit MOU, and this unapproved drone pilot, your administration shows a pattern of bypassing public trust. Metro Code mandates a council vote for any tech capable of public recording, regardless of whether you label it surveillance or a first responder tool. By letting MMPD self-authorize this trial, you're violating city code and open procurement laws. If this program is legal, Mayor, why did you allow your police to exploit an unwritten free trial loophole to launch it without a council vote? I'll take my answer off the air. Thank you.
Hey, Trina, thank you. We do, I will say, we've held Metro Nashville Police Department accountable since I took office. There have been multiple independent reports. We've done town halls. We have routinely had public hearings on important votes about both funding and any other contractual obligations that wind up supporting MMPD's exploration of whether it's technology-based approaches or partnerships. And there are, on almost every Metro Council agenda, there is something that Metro Council gets the opportunity to weigh in on with regard to how we do policing. So I think there are a lot of points of public accountability there. In this case, this is a program that we worked very closely with MMPD to ensure appropriate privacy protections and worked with the council members who are engaged in it and have affirmed that they want to have it be piloted in their area. So in this case, there were community engagement points in Madison. It is a single precinct. It is a pilot. It's a limited period. As somebody who worked on the Metro Council to ensure these points of public input, this one is one, like some, that don't always meet the tests of legal requirement, but we all are always compliant with the law here and the charter.
And so that's this 45-day pilot program where they're going to be using a drone to respond in this 2-mile radius around the Madison precinct to respond to emergencies, criminal investigations, missing persons, and significant traffic crashes. I think one of the important things that at least the police department was saying is that it won't be used for general surveillance. But do you have reservations about the project?
Blake, in this case, that's the whole point, is the cameras aren't even on when the drones are arriving at the scene. So there's not a concern there in that regard.
Meaning that I'm trying to imagine how the cameras aren't on. Well, I mean, I'm just thinking of drones, how they operate. I imagine you need the visible.
They're navigable by location of the drone, and so they're really, to your point, exploring how they can get to the scene. They're going to be deployed when there is a request for service where it is identifiable from this one specific precinct.
I see.
Where they can arrive at the scene faster than a responding officer could.
Got it. Imagine there'll be more questions on that over time. So we'll get back to it. Calls for the mayor, questions for the mayor. His number. It's actually our number. 615-760-2000. Let's take another call. This is from William in Nashville. William, you're on with Mayor Freddie O'Connell. Go ahead.
Hello, Mayor. Thanks for taking my call. I appreciate it. My question is, there are so many parcels in downtown Nashville and around the city that have been redeveloped from surface parking lots to 40 and 50-story buildings like the 505 downtown. The tax base that those would have to generate from going from a surface lot to a massive building with expensive condos, how is that not enough additional revenue for the city? That I would think that would be enough to not need to raise our taxes so much.
No, William, this is a great question, and it's somebody who represented that urban core footprint for so many years. It's a tough one because, we're 526 square miles of city and county, and while it does offer an improvement, and if you look at just sort of the efficiency of our tax base, it is far more efficient to be in downtown, to be in the Gulch, than even in a denser outer-lying area like a Lenox Village or something like that. You do get considerably more tax base, but it is absolutely not enough to offset 526 square miles of government also experiencing the impact of 5 years' worth of inflation to the tune of about 26%. And that's been a part of how we've wound up in this scenario, is we have to make sure that wages for public employees are keeping up with the cost of living. We are also making new investments that have a broader base in allowing us as a local government to invest in affordability. And we are in opportunities to do it in a more targeted way, trying to offset some of that, like with this year's proposal to reduce our grocery taxes.
Yeah, William, thanks for the question.
I just
go ahead.
The raise in taxes putting a lot of small businesses around town, especially in East Nashville, out of business. And I've heard you talk a lot about doing things with good partners, the convention center, and whoever's building down by the stadium. But what about the small business owners literally getting put out of business because they can't afford the property taxes? And it's going to continue. I, in fact, own a business in Nashville, and I'm having a hard time paying my property taxes. In fact, they're delinquent because they're so high. The numbers don't work. I'm going to have to get rid of mom and pop businesses and rent to, bigger corporations. And that's not the fabric of the businesses that we want in Nashville. So I wish you would take that into consideration, but it seems like always it's just the big companies that get help and the small businesses are left struggling.
William, that's absolutely not true. And I mean, I guess it's tough because I know some neighborhoods have seen, including parts of East Nashville, have seen property values increase dramatically. And that's one of the hard parts, is I don't talk to a lot of people who want to see their property values go down. And when you see an area where small business growth has attracted people to the area. It's one of the costs of doing business. I think, we're very sensitive to the fact that this past year's property assessment pushed property values up across the county more than I think a lot of us were expecting, which probably feels like an imbalance to small business. But what I'm encouraged by is we're still seeing an incredible amount of small and locally owned business growth. In fact, in my own neighborhood, we just had a new neighborhood market open at one of the areas where commercial activity, I think a lot of people have been waiting for. We still see a lot of wonderful entrepreneurship, and we're supporting it directly. We just visited one of my favorite places is Peachtree Grill, which has just benefited from being able to now open year-round after being kind of a walk-up grill site. They were able to take advantage of a property investment incentive grant. We're trying to ease pathways into that. We have a legacy business fund that we're rolling out this year to further support small business. So it's one of the things we constantly encourage. We routinely survey our office and other partners to make sure we're supporting very specific small business communities. And I would encourage all of our listening audience to prefer our local businesses when you're going out shopping.
William, thanks for the call, and we'll stay on this topic for a moment. And if there are more questions on it, we'll take it up through the hour, 615-760-2000, or you can chime in on the video stream, which is youtube.com/@WPLN. Obviously, you've gotten an earful, Mayor, from Lower Broadway business owners, especially whose property tax bills have doubled, even tripled, which is almost hard to believe, but in recent years. So the state did step in and diverted some tourist tax surplus to offset those tax bills. I didn't realize it was in that package. Did you know that it was part of this deal to get money out of the convention center? And I know you've called it unfair, but why?
Yeah, we knew late in the game that it had been added. It was certainly not added at our request. We expressed pretty clearly that we thought it was unfair, and it's unfair specifically because if you look at the transactions, I mean, I don't know if you saw over the past few weeks, for instance, 12 South Taproom, the prices that people are paying for property in areas like this is exactly what is contributing to these high valuations that then in turn, I mean, I don't get to go in and say, no, that's not a reasonable assessment. I mean, if somebody is paying tens of millions of dollars for a property like that, that has a corresponding impact on the taxes that come out of that property as opposed to one maybe a few miles away that is not seeing an area like that has that intensity of interest from property owners and future property owners. In this case, my fear is that these businesses downtown that are producing tremendous amounts of revenue, we can see the level of business success there because people continue, again, along Broadway and on those cross streets right off of it in the entertainment district, paying remarkable sums for those properties. That's if you see somebody paying 3 times what a property was last sold for, that's exactly why the property taxes go up correspondingly.
So why unfair, though, for there to be a little offset that comes essentially from tourist taxes that would otherwise be used, it seems, to, incentivize, events to come to town or other businesses to build here? Because
if what you're saying is, hey, this was unfair, I'm not entirely sure what's happening because we've had the state come in and say the assessment looks like it was conducted appropriately, specifically in this area. And what you're saying is, well, we're going to give these particular businesses that are producing this successful value, what William was just talking about, an offset while the rest of the county is not getting that offset.
But isn't that kind of what your office or the state does anyway when you're giving, tax breaks to incentivize companies to build here in the first place or expand?
To some extent, but that's why we have taken an approach that is trying to focus on how we can support smaller and locally owned businesses.
I see. Well, we can pick up that topic again if we need to. 615-760-2000 is the number. Darden, we've got you waiting on the line. Darden from Nashville, you're on with the mayor. Go ahead.
Hey, good afternoon, Mayor Darden here. I worked to save the fairgrounds 16 years ago when Carl Dean suggested paving over the entire 117 acres. We saved that, allowed for the current uses to be codified in the charter. It also allows for the Metro Council to do away with any of those uses should they decide to. Now we have billionaire soccer owner John Ingram proposing a charter amendment that does away with racing and tears down the racetrack. That could go for signatures and go to the ballot. Curious what your administration, how you feel about this charter amendment.
Yeah, Darden, thanks for the call. I will say I haven't looked as carefully at the most recent one just because I think it's finally maybe been approved by the Charter Revision Commission. I need to go take a look at it. I will say previous versions of it concerned me because they enabled far more than just kind of a tear down the racetrack proposition. And it was very strange to me to kind of see it commingled with housing affordability, because I think it's not necessarily what I would recommend to voters, is to consider taking these, special sites in Nashville that have hosted really remarkable uses for more than a century to just, I come back to our issue with housing affordability is rarely one of lack of availability of land. So I think the way that the original proposals here have been structured is problematic in its own right, because I don't think anybody is out there saying let's tear down the fairgrounds, but that's sort of what is enabled by this proposal. So I've been skeptical as it's made its way through. I'm going to take a look at this final one, but what I saw originally proposed didn't seem to me to really advance a productive conversation about the future of the fairgrounds.
Darden, thanks for the call. We need to take a break. You can get in with the mayor. The number is 615-760-2000. This comment from a caller, small businesses. It's about small businesses, who says, been a supporter of Freddie, but his comments on small businesses just rubbed me the wrong way. No small businesses left, in my view, and that she doesn't see anything else around her, all gone. Obviously there's a lot.
Blake, I don't know how me encouraging Nashvillians to go support our local business community rubs her the wrong way, but we'll see.
Yes, we will. Let's take a quick break. We'll come right back, talk AI data centers, maybe Waymo, 7 Mile Creek, and take more of your calls. The number is 615-760-2000. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
Freddie is a man of class. We want Freddie for a leader. All stand and raise your champagne glass. We want Freddie for a leader. Freddie is a man of class. We want Freddie.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners. And the Higgins Firm, assisting clients with nursing home neglect and serious personal injury cases. Online at thehigginsfirm.com. And Press Forward at the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee, with a short survey asking residents how they receive local information, from school updates to severe weather alerts. Details at pressforwardmidtn.news.
Some of the American heroes I most admire are civil rights activists. I'm Holly Kernan, president of Nashville Public Radio, and I was recently in Memphis at the Civil Rights Museum. It struck me that our democracy is arguably only 60 years old. I think about protesters who sat at lunch counters and resisted the basic human instinct to fight back. That's bravery. In this 250th anniversary of the American experiment, what inspires that kind of courage in us now?
I'm Blake Farmer. This is Nashville. We're back with the mayor. We're just going to jump straight back into it. The number for questions is 615-760-2000. Mayor Freddie O'Connell right here, as he is each month. You can also use the chat in our video stream. It's youtube.com/@WPLN. Let's go back to the phones. Everett in Nashville. Everett, you're on with the mayor. Go ahead.
How are the increased property taxes affecting public schools?
Oh, Everett, I love this question. They are allowing us to make what was, in the budget cycle we're currently in, the largest ever new investment in public education in Nashville, which is a big deal because what we're seeing from students in our public schools is historic performances. The past couple of academic years, we've had the highest graduation rates in Metro's history, and that means that our students are better prepared for Nashville's economy in the future, which is exactly the kind of effect we want to have.
Everett, thanks so much for the question. And Everett didn't ask this, but I'll add this on. My voice is less cute. But so your budget is now kind of up for consideration by the council and discussion. And next week there's public input. One of the things that's been added to it is on education. I think something $50 million. Some would go to teacher pay, also maybe some school security.
Yep.
Are you supportive? What would that take money from to make that happen?
I mean, Blake, I think that's the hard part is, right, going back even to William's question of where we've had to cover the cost of inflation and look to make target investments. This year is a continuation of what we started last year, a community improvement program focused on schools, services, and safety. And so in general, we've been able to make an across-the-board series of investments in the metro workforce. Most departments over the past year, we were able to catch up a little bit with Nashville's growth, but it's, in this year, it's kind of like we're taking a deep breath. We know that revenues are flat. We know that we've made these targeted investments in schools is that most significant investment we make as a city. It's been that way for as long as I can remember, and I think it is one of the most important investments we make overall. But it's not, I guess I'd say it this way. I would not characterize making a significant investment in schools as taking away from other things. It's one of a series of things we invest in as a city.
But if the council added more to that, they would have to find the money,
right?
Pull it from somewhere.
Anytime you're making it, and I lived through this for 8 years, anytime you've got a priority, I mean, we make a recommended budget as a mayor's office. I went through, 3 different administrations of mayors recommending budgets to the Metro Council. And I knew that if I were going to adjust a priority based on things I was hearing from my constituents, based on what I and my colleagues on Metro Council were looking at, we always had to identify that funding source. And so if you make adjustments right now, you're engaged in a series of trade-offs, and that's exactly what the budget process is.
We heard even from William, who we've referenced now multiple times. William, thanks for calling today. About him being delinquent. I assume meaning he has not paid his property taxes. Right. Maybe he's been fighting them. We've just had sort of the initial round of informal appeals about property values adjusted down, I believe, $54 million or so. The deadline for, I believe it's the formal appeal is June 26th. Anyway, property owners are appealing tax bills. We've heard from several that they're basically not paying at least their full property tax bill until then. Are there enough of those unpaid bills, delinquent bills, that you're going to need budget cuts in the coming year?
We're looking at that. We try to factor in. We've got a multi-year backlog of appeals. In fact, that was, as we were starting last year's budget process, one of the challenging things we had to do was account for being tens of millions of dollars behind on the basis of, sort of the appeals backlog that's out there. I would say, I mean, if any of our property owners, including our small business owners, think that their assessed value of their property is incorrect, they should appeal it.
Yeah. Is that the recommendation to pay? Do you pay like last year's amount and then wait? Or what is the recommendation?
I mean, I'm not going to say, I'd say recommendation is to pay your taxes, but if you're appealing, there is sort of a look at it and see what it is. But I mean, this is based on the assessor and the trustees process, and they're going to send you that bill. I mean, as a property owner myself, I mean, I have both been through the challenge process, showed evidence, appealed, and then every other year I'm sort of looking at it and looking around and saying, for owning a property for several years, there are years when it feels like, I'm looking around at comps in my neighborhood and it feels like we're seeing property values go up.
Yeah. Let's take another call. If you want to get on the line with Mayor Freddie O'Connell, the number 615-760-2000. Kevin, your turn. Kevin in Nashville. Go ahead. You're on with the mayor.
Hey, Freddie. How you doing today?
I'm doing all right, Kevin. How are you?
I can't complain. So, I just got a couple comments and a few questions. So, I love Nashville. We all do. That's why we're here. Used to be able to get around downtown. Parking was affordable. Is there ever any stop to the growth in the building and the like the old song goes, we pay paradise and put up a parking lot? Or are we almost done? And what about the parking? Like I say, when people go downtown, it costs them so much to park.
Oh man, my free parking spots are gone. I'll tell you that. They were over by the Ben West Library. You cannot get away with it. Go ahead, Mayor.
Yeah, no.
I miss the day when you could like pull up and you had the parking meters. I miss those old parking meters because you could feed them before 6 o'clock, and then after 6 o'clock at night, from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., you know, you didn't get a ticket and you didn't have to pay $45 or $50.
Kevin, thanks for the question. Mayor, what do you think about parking? You're going to get people where it hurts here.
Kevin, this one's fun. I mean, it's kind of a nostalgic question for me too, because I'd tell you I come from a long line of I'll say my dad refused to pay for parking anytime we went to downtown, and so we would circle for blocks to find that free spot. I think for me, while that is part of my lineage, I also look at it and say, frequently now Metro has garages that are the most cost-effective downtown. The one at City Hall and the courthouse, if I'm on the south side of Broadway, I'll frequently park at the convention center, or if the weather is decent, even up at the Fulton Complex and walk down the hill. We're working on getting the downtown library garage back online. There's a garage at We Go Central. Those tend to be the best rates. To your point though, I guess I'd say from a growth perspective, and again, having worked on this for years before being mayor, I always felt like we were pretty successful if we were turning just an old parking lot into something that served the community better, especially if you were kind of keeping that capacity there. I mean, I think one of the harder parts about where we've gotten to is there's just, I guess a willingness of enough people to be down there. We've got more than 50,000 parking spaces downtown. It's just that, I mean, that's the thing. We're not suffering from a lack of available spaces, but it's also a place where we don't have a lot of local regulatory authority. Again, over the past few years, we've focused on signage requirements and other things that are trying to give you transparency to make it not inadvisable. Like you could find at least certainty about it. And then we've also tried to offer, while not quite as easy to get to from the metered places you recommend. I'm actually kind of personally relieved that I don't have to fish for quarters anymore at a lot of our urban metered spots and can actually, just tap to pay with my phone. Yeah.
Any regrets though about outsourcing that parking?
That overall proposal, I think we're going to, that was not something I supported at either of the times it was proposed on council, and we're kind of looking at what our options are going forward. I think the technology is good. I think we could operate it on a public basis, and we'll see where we get to with that in the next few years. There's a contract, that we inherited, and we'll see where we get to with that. Overall, though, too, I mean, we're trying to make it ever easier to get into and out of downtown on other ways. I mean, I'm very encouraged by my friends I hear from every week that are either trying transit for the first time or have made it a part of how they do things. I was over at one of the early concerts at the new Ascend Amphitheater, where we have not only new greenway access, but it was great to see so many people parking bikes. So we want to allow everybody access to downtown, however they're choosing to get there, and make that safer, easier, more accessible, more convenient. And yeah, I mean, on Metro's side, we're always going to try to offer very reasonable costs for where there is parking available.
Let's go back to the phones, and if you want to get on with the mayor, do it quickly. The number is 615-760-2000. Chris in Bellevue. Chris, you're on with the mayor. Go ahead.
Hey, how you doing there?
Hey, doing all right, Chris. How are you?
Good. I'm a general contractor. I've done a lot of work for friends and neighbors, and had a number of instances where I had customers that had to pave poor sidewalks. There was an ordinance where they were required, if they pulled a building permit. The Sixth Circuit Court ruled that was essentially unconstitutional.
Yep.
But the city's not refunded that money to those residents and business owners.
They've refunded quite a bit. I mean, I know even again, going back to when I was on council, that process had already started. So there have been some refunds out of that court ruling.
Who do you go to get a refund?
There were no notices.
Yeah.
There were no notices issued. It was if you weren't paying attention to the newspaper and everything, and you cut it off. People that spent tens of thousands of dollars And small businesses that spend a ton of money on that are just out of luck. It's nothing but big corporations that get love from Nashville. It's the small
that is 100% not true. And let's
paying.
see if we can get you some information about how, for you as a contractor, we can make sure that for money that you are owed from that, we'll follow up with some more information to supply to WPLN here.
I've emailed Metro Legal. They said you missed the cutoff.
Okay. Well, we'll see what else is out there, because I know we were still processing some of those in just the past couple of years. So let's see what we can do there.
Thanks a lot, Chris.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Let's take. I want to bring up this issue, then we'll hit the phones. Be quick though. 615-760-2000. The Business Journal reported last week that another company, an Atlanta-based company, is building a data center kind of behind the zoo, between the zoo and Radnor Rail Yard, kind of a mid-sized data center, I think. But we've obviously heard of other things. Fisk has this proposed data center. They're popping up all over the place. Meanwhile, Cedar Hill, this town in Robertson County, is talking about putting a pause on data centers. Does the city have a data center strategy? Are there concerns from your office?
Yeah, we stay in touch. I mean, the biggest three things that are concerns and considerations here tend to be access to electricity, access to water, and then is there any pollution source associated with it? And so I'll tell you, one of the things we've been looking at, we've been talking with the planning department about, is do we need to start looking at this as a use, like a land use within our zoning code? I think there's some interest in that on the Metro Council right now too. As I talked to Dr. Clark, the president of Fisk University, she was, and you could hear this when we were over on campus to talk about this, her fundamental principle was do no harm. I mean, that is she reiterated that, and they do have an available power source there. So I'm less concerned about it. I mean, I guess Blake too, having grown up at the dawn of the internet in Nashville and been in some facilities that probably back then, I don't even know if they were called data centers.
Right. Well, you were with the company that kind of brought Nashville online.
And so like we dealt with servers all the time. I was in, heavily cooled environments with lots of computers on a regular basis. And I would say, there wasn't anything particularly controversial about it then. I think this is also tied into what these things are kind of being used for.
Right. You're saying the AI part of it, that it's kind of a black box and mysterious now. And
we're keeping an eye on it. It is not something we have seen a lot of yet in Nashville, but I think we're going to make sure that this doesn't create pressure for ratepayers and isn't going to create harmful side effects where if they do wind up showing up in Nashville.
Let's try to work in at least one more call here. Jesse in Madison, you're on with Mayor Freddie O'Connell. Go ahead.
Hi, Mayor Freddie. My name is Jesse Taylor. I bought my house around 3 years ago in cash from Florida, and I came to Nashville to do music like everyone else. I am recently separated from the father of my child due to like a domestic violence incident, and he does not help me at all anymore. My property taxes went crazy. It went from I think $1,400 to over $2,300. And as a single mother, it's been very difficult for me. And they priced my house at $320. When I appealed it, it went to $290. Keep in mind, my house has been on sale since December of 2023. Okay, I'm asking for repairs on what I bought it for, and I'm unable to get that. On top of that, I'm paying almost, maybe close to double the property taxes, but I can't even get under $250 for my house.
Jesse,
thanks. I know where my tax dollars are going, and I know it's been for the businesses, it's gone up. But what about single mothers like me that don't have help?
Yeah, Jesse, thanks for your call, and I'm so sorry for what you're going through. And I hope, first, let me say, I hope you're safe. First and foremost, I know that is a very, very difficult situation. I hope you and your child are both safe. So certainly stay in touch if you need anything in that regard. We have a great Office of Family Safety, and I hope that if you need any resources in that regard, you're taking advantage of that opportunity. And then beyond that, I'll say, I know this sounds like a very, very difficult circumstance, and it sounds like you've been through the appeal process and had limited success there. I know it can be challenging when you feel like the value of your home is being unfairly calculated, because the hard part for me as mayor is I hear a story like yours, and it's so challenging for you or any of the small businesses we've talked to today. Is I don't have the unilateral ability to go in and sort of dial down your property value. I mean, that is one of the hardest parts about the interplay between how the assessment process and the property tax process works, because we just established the lowest property tax rate in the history of Metro. And again, to your point about where the tax dollars go, we accounted for the 5-year impact of inflation and made some strategic investments in basic city services, schools, and public safety. But we, even through that process of going through an assessment cycle and a revenue cycle, this was not sort of a windfall period for Metro. But you can go to nashville.gov/finance, we've got a citizen's guide to the budget. This year's proposed fiscal year 2027 documents are all there. You can see all the revenue sources and all the expenditures and go see exactly like Everett's question of how those property tax dollars are benefiting every last measure of public service we as a city provide. It is one of the only tools we have to be able to operate this city from a standpoint of police, fire, teachers, librarians, and to build the facilities and buy the equipment that they use.
Jesse in Madison, really appreciate your call and your insights there. And that may be where I have to leave it, although I hate not getting to Courtney in East Nashville, who says we'd love to see you run as president or vice president because you're such a wonderful mayor. Did you pay Courtney to call in?
I did not. Don't know Courtney, okay. But we may reach out. I should say in very unequivocal terms, absolutely not. I like my politics local best of all.
Courtney, appreciate that comment, and sorry I didn't get to your call. We're saying goodbye to Mayor O'Connell. He'll be back next month, and we're going to turn now to Curious Nashville. It's a question we fielded on the air this year. J.T. Moore Middle School, named after John Trotwood Moore, who was openly racist, a proponent of lynching, an apologist for the Old South. Please help us, this is the question, understand why schools in Metro are named after people with such heinous records and what can be done to correct this. Well, we've got some answers. Stay with us. This is Nashville.
We want Freddie for a leader. Freddie is a man of cross. We want Freddie for a leader. Oh, the state of raise your champagne glass. We want Freddie for a leader. Freddie is a man of cross.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Tennessee State Parks with the Tennessee Golf Trail, 9 courses statewide, including 3 Jack Nicklaus-designed Bear Trace courses. Golf with views of rolling hills and Tennessee wildlife. More at tnstateparks.com.
And Vanderbilt Health. From sewing up minor cuts to performing double organ transplants, Vanderbilt Health, solving the most complex problems, prepares them to solve any problem. More at whyvanderbilthealth.com.
I'm Chapel Roan.
Hey there, this is John Oates.
This is Justin from Bon Iver.
And I'm Justin Barney, music reporter on WPLN. The key to my job is listening, not just to people's music, but to what they have to say.
I never said that out loud before.
I'm so glad you asked.
You will hear artists telling the stories of their songs on WPLN.
Making my way downtown, walking fast, faces passing, I'm homebound. First song on piano, right there.
Yes.
Curious Nashville.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Curious Nashville. You know, nearly every day, including today, I drive by J.T. Moore Middle School, sometimes more than once a day. My daughter plays softball at the park next to it. I buy produce from the stand that sits in the corner, still waiting on the fresh peas and sugar baby watermelons to come in. If you were interested, there is a sign explaining who John Trotwood Moore is. It's kind of buried in the redbud leaves there. But it mentions nothing of him being a segregationist and an advocate for lynching. though he was those things. And that is the basis of a question we got from Larry Woods, who now sits in the studio with us. J.T. Moore Middle School is named after John Trotwood Moore, who was openly racist, a proponent of lynching, and an apologist for the Old South. Please help us understand why schools in Metro are named after people with such heinous records, and that what can be done to correct this. So Larry is in here, and so is education reporter Camellia Burris. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having us.
So Camellia, who was John Trotwood Moore?
Well, Moore was a Nashville-based novelist, a poet, a local historian. He was the state librarian for a few years, but he was also an advocate for the Old South, meaning he was a proponent for lynching and segregation.
Yeah, I was looking through like obituaries for him this morning, and you look in Alabama where he grew up, and he was remembered fondly for going down and making this long speech about what a patriot Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy, was. Larry, how did this come on your radar?
Well, 2 of my children went to John Trotwood Moore.
Okay.
And about 10 years ago, roughly, it was a public issue here in town. About 2019, not 10 years ago, probably because the Episcopal rector at the big Episcopal church in Montgomery, Alabama, made the decision to take out the pew that in 1923 had been dedicated to the memory of Jefferson Davis.
Wait, this is what I read this morning, was right. That he was that John Trotwood Moore was remembered for, he was the person invited to go and make this speech about Jefferson Davis, I assume in that church.
Exactly. He was invited because he was a known racist and proud of it. He wanted to speak both there and in many of his editorials that he wrote in his own magazine and other places. He would write editorials about African Americans didn't want the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments, the ban on slavery, due process, citizenship. They didn't want that, didn't deserve it. And for that matter, neither did poor whites. If you were not landed gentry, you really didn't have any status in his world.
Yeah. Well, so there is a sign outside of the school that here's what it says, and it looks like it was put up in 1970. Tennessee novelist, poet, co-author, 4-volume history, Tennessee, the Volunteer State Publisher, Trotwood Monthly, author of short stories, breeder and judge of livestock, teacher, lecturer, beloved companion, and raconteur, President, Tennessee Historical Society, State Librarian, Archivist, 1919 to 2029, or 1929, lived in his home, Arden Place, on this site. So it doesn't mention anything about segregation and slavery and such. Why? How do we know what we know about him?
Well, the best way to get educated about him is go to the Tennessee Historical Quarterly for 1999, where historian Fred Bailey wrote a long article on the biography history of John Trotwood Moore.
Yeah.
And in that Trotwood Taylor journal that he and former Governor Taylor put out together, Trotwood Moore wrote things like, white supremacy is what everybody ought to appreciate and work for. He wrote things saying, the history of Tennessee begins with white people. I guess there are a few Cherokees and others out there that would resent that. He said, only the pure breed, referring to white people, can ever reach the stars. Keep your race history undiluted. There's no better blood than Anglo-Saxon. I mean, he wrote all these awful things and then got to his support for lynching.
Well, I think you've listed enough. Do we know why this school was named for John Trotwood Moore?
Well, he was a very popular political person. Governor Roberts, who was in office in the 1920s, appointed him as the state librarian. He was in control of a big, John Trotwood Moore was in charge of all the state library work across the state, a very large budget. He was close friends with many of the Tennessee political leaders, all of whom were white males at the time. And, it was the typical political gang of, we're going to take care of ourselves and we don't really care about anybody else.
Yeah. Camellia, I know you've been sort of looking into this, talking to our Davidson County historian. What do people make of J.T. Moore's name being on a public building?
Well, he basically says that the refusal for people in power to rename these buildings can kind of be an endorsement of this behavior. And he also talks about how people of color must feel going into places that honor people who are known segregationists or who are proponents of lynching. He talked about going into the Capitol and seeing the Nathan Bedford Forrest bust that was there for a while and how it would make someone of color feel to walk in and see that imposing bust on you.
Yeah, let's hear a little bit from LaRotha Williams.
Every time a black person walked into that legislative chamber and they looked over there and they saw that statue, first they had to look up at him, and then it was a very imposing statue. I can remember during some of the conversations that we had about why we should remove it. It was like, for me, every time I saw that, that was a whites only sign.
Yeah, so Nathan Bedford Forrest, a long story about him, but he's a slave trader, if nothing else, also a Confederate general. That bust is gone, Camellia. J.T. Moore has not changed names. Like, has Metro Schools ever tried to change its name?
Well, I spoke with a spokesperson last week, and they said that they can't because of a state law called the Tennessee Preservation Act. And this law prevents the removal, renaming, or relocation of any memorial on a public building, and a building named after an historical figure falls under that law. So they cannot change it.
Cannot, or it would take a lot to do it?
It would take a lot to do it,
Yeah.
and I don't know that's ever been done successfully. So you can apply for a waiver with the Tennessee Monuments and Memorial Commission, but when I reached out to the commission, they did not give me any examples of if they've ever approved it. I looked online, and the only examples were them denying it. So I don't know that they've ever actually approved a renaming.
Well, Dr. Lee Williams says that, the refusal to rename these buildings says a lot about people in power. Let's listen.
We have looked at these people in one way for all of these years, so we're not going to erase history. And that's the thing, they'll say they'll erase history. Okay, we won't erase it, but we'll certainly ignore it or low-key endorse it.
It makes me think, in the studio, Mayor Freddie O'Connell, this was sort of news to him that J.T. Moore, who he was. And it's like, well, how did we have a school come to be named for him? It's like, well, he lived there, so I guess they named it after him. What's Dr. Williams getting at here? That it's almost an endorsement to just kind of say, not worry about it. We'll just make sure to not name any more buildings after him.
Well, I reached out to the Tennessee Historical Commission to find out more about this. And when I asked them for more history, they just provided kind of the information that was already on the school website about him being a poet and a novelist. They didn't mention any of the segregationist views, too. So in a way, I think Dr. Williams was referring to them only wanting to acknowledge the positive side and maybe not caring or ignoring the parts of him that promoted racist ideologies.
Larry, what do you make of this? It seems like there is a point that you could start renaming all sorts of things. Would we name things after Andrew Jackson anymore if you had it to do over again?
No.
Well, that's what. So,
I wouldn't name him after Bill Clinton either, and I voted for him, unfortunately.
Yeah. So what's the solution here, in your view?
The solution is, as we become aware of these problems, we ought to take action and be accountable. And, of course, politicians are not good about being accountable for what they do and fail to do. I mean, in 2019, when this subject last came up about the J.T. Moore School name, I called 2 members of our National School Board to complain and say, hey, and this was before the state law was passed, making it difficult to change names. They never even called me back. I left them a long message, sent them a text or an email at the time saying, look, this guy's a racist. We got to do something about this. They never responded. Being typical politicians.
It does seem like it would take a lot of work one way or the other to make this happen. Is there an alternative? Is there something to be done that wouldn't require, going through the rigmarole of changing the name, the official name of this building?
How about if we had all the students at J.T. Moore make a banner with a new name on it that they could hang at the building? And, officially the name might not be any different, but I bet the students would feel empowered about doing that. I bet the teachers and staff would feel empowered.
Camellia, do we know if the historical sign that is out front explaining who John Trotwood Moore is something that could be edited, updated?
I'm not sure if it could be updated, but as I mentioned about the renaming, it is a pretty high bar for them to do that. And they didn't give me much information, but I looked online at examples of people trying to rename things, and I came up with the efforts to rename MTSU the Forest Hall, which was named after Nathan Bedford Forrest, who was a KKK leader. And in the order denying that request, it says that the renaming had to serve a compelling public interest. And that led me to wonder, well, what is a compelling public interest? And I think different people have a different idea of that, because I would think renaming a building named after a KKK leader would be a compelling public interest, but apparently the commission did not agree.
So you're saying if that is the example, well, the name Forest Hall is still on the MTSU campus. It's not, and it kind of has died down. It seems. You expect that it would be the same thing if J.T. Moore were brought to the state?
Yeah, I think it looks like the bar would have to be serving a compelling public interest, and I think that's kind of a subjective bar.
Yeah.
And I'd like more information about what that means, but I think that's for the commission to how they determine that.
Well, Larry Woods, you see a compelling interest here that you'd want to explain?
Absolutely. We should all do what we can in our daily lives to support the ideals in the Declaration of Independence, even if it was written by somebody I wouldn't put his name on there either. The ideals in our constitutional democracy, and naming our monuments and our schools, giving recognition to people who really were sinful, and everybody knew it, and they were, flaunted it. That exposes us as people who are not paying attention, who are not trying to be kind every day to other people. And I think it's a compelling public interest, especially in public life in this day and age, that kindness and charity, in the best sense of the word, and being accountable ought to be exemplars in our life.
Well, Larry Woods, we appreciate you bringing this to our attention. Camellia Burris, thank you for answering the question about the why, even if it's unsatisfying to our guest.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Blake.
Curious Nashville.
Well, thank you for tuning in this hour for all of it. This is Nashville and Curious Nashville, productions of Nashville Public Radio. If you missed yesterday's episode, we learned all about the Samurai Blue, who will be camped out with us during the World Cup. Japan's national soccer team is here partly because of the city and state's long business history with Japan. You can listen to that at thisisnashville.org. Today's episode was produced by Mary Mancini and Camellia Burris, directed by Tasha A.F. Limley. Producer Josh Deepen is on the phones. Liv Lombardi making us sound and look good on the boards. The masterminds behind that theme music are LaRange and Namir Blade. So whether it's a Curious Nashville question or a comment about the show, we love to hear from you. Our on-air number actually goes to voicemail once we're not live, so hit us up anytime, 615-760-2000. You can also find us on Instagram at thisisnashville_WPLN. I'm Blake Farmer. Go in peace.
The Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at Vanderbilt University, working to offer non-credit courses taught by thought-provoking instructors to create a community of like